Hello, beautiful humans. I'm Jem Madrone, and today I'm going to talk about depression. Now, depression is a huge subject we definitely can't cover in, 10, 15 minutes. And there's so many different aspects of depression and so many different things that cause depression from hormones to mental imbalances to lack of sun to food, lifestyle, on and on. And so there's a lot of ways that we have to address depression. But for the purpose of this video and this group, we're going to be talking about the emotional, spiritual aspects of depression today to try to limit it a little bit. And depression is a depressing subject. So I want to shine some light on it because I know that a lot of people are struggling with this. And in the past few years, it's become less taboo to talk about depression. It's become a lot more open than it was like 10 years ago when no one would admit that they were depressed, or very few people. And if you did, it was kind of like, ooh, that person's depressed. And now you see so many people talking about it. And I also find that friends and people who I really have seen do a lot of personal work and who are also teachers and healers, we all have periods of depression. And though some people's depression is much deeper and more chronic than others, we have to really recognize that depression is actually a pretty fairly common, a lot more common thing and a normal thing than really we have been willing to acknowledge up until recently. And so, depression it's definitely a vague phrase, and so it can cover a whole range of symptoms. But really, it leaves us feeling completely unmotivated. It leaves us feeling just kind of like we have no focus, like we have no energy to do anything. And that's really one of the biggest symptoms is just not having any energy. And we feel like there's no hope. And that's really funny because right before I started this video, the Mormon missionaries just came to the door and were talking to me about hope. And I told them, actually, I have a lot of hope. I'm doing pretty good. So that's pretty funny because they're kind of talking about the same thing, about how the world feels very hopeless, and it's from a very different perspective, but there it is, because they're really it goes through waves, but generally there's this underlying current of dissatisfaction and of fear and of suffering and of struggling that is constant and consistent in our culture. And so that shows up as depression in so many people. And like I said, it leaves us really just completely unmotivated and stagnant and just feeling like sometimes there's no reason to live. There's no reason to get out of bed. There's no reason to do anything because, you know, we can come up with a million negative reasons. All we have to do is turn on the news. All we have to do is talk to someone, and we can come up with plenty of reasons for why we feel depressed. And so, what I see is that one, depression to me is an amazing symptom to show us that we are disconnected from ourselves and disconnected from source, which is the same thing. And so it shows up to teach us that, to shine a light on where we're still disconnected. And that's why people in all places of this transformational process experience depression, because there's always a place where we could be more connected to ourselves. There's always a place, that needs a little more love and a little more compassion. And so that depression shows up so that we can see that, so that we can find that place where we feel so disconnected, and we can really take the time to reconnect and just to love ourselves and to bring light to those dark places. And I also often hear, that we have to suffer to grow. And although it's really true that suffering and deep, painful suffering is often the cause of transformation, of awakening, it's the catalyst that makes us begin doing that deep work of spiritual growth and emotional healing. And so sometimes, it definitely is necessary to catalyze that process and get us going. But I don't believe I just don't believe that blanket statement that struggling or suffering is necessary in order to grow. We get to a point where we can say, okay, I don't want to struggle anymore. I don't want to suffer anymore. How can I continue to grow and release my attachment to suffering? Because that's another thing I see in this culture, is that we have a huge attachment to struggling and suffering. And if you're not working hard, and if you're not making sacrifices, you're kind of looked down on in the culture in a lot of ways. And it's this underlying current of our addiction to suffering, or the old programming that we have to suffer in order to grow. And so if you're struggling with depression, there's a couple things to do. One is see are you feeling disconnected from yourself, and how can you reestablish that connection? In what little ways can you start to do that? And two, like, where are you attached to suffering? Where do you feel like it's necessary to suffer? And then, is that really true? And so doing that work of deprogramming our addiction and attachment to suffering, and then shifting that. Okay, so what do we want to be attached to? What do we want to bring into our lives? If it's not suffering, can we bring growth and healing in by focusing on love? I think we can. And I think that it's happening, and we have to remind ourselves that that's possible, and we have to choose, okay, am I done with that? And so, how can I choose to bring more love into my life and use that as a tool for my transformation? And so, I think that that's where we're going on this path of spiritual evolution. And I think it's really time to disconnect from that suffering and reconnect to ourselves and to that source energy that is pure love. And as we do that, we just show others that it's possible. And so really it's one of the least selfish things we can do, because as we do that for ourselves, then other people see that, and they see that it is possible to change these old ways of being. So if you're struggling with depression right now, just sending so much love to you. You're not alone. Probably most people are struggling with it right now. And so let's start talking about it. Talk to people about it. Ask them how they're doing, and just keep the conversation open, because once we talk about the fact that maybe we're feeling depressed, then we can talk about the fact of how we're able to move through it. And together, we are raising the bar, we are raising the vibration. And so let's just keep helping each other out. And if you feel really stuck in this state of depression or in any part of the awakening process, then please send me a message and we can talk and see if the work that I do with my clients would be a good fit for you. So sending so much love to all of you guys. Also, get outside. That's going to help with the depression. Whether you feel like it or not, go outside. Whether it's raining or not, go outside, because that nature is an amazing antidote, especially if you can get by running water or mountains. Then that's some amazing medicine. So, all right, lots of love to everybody. If you have any questions, just leave them here. And I'll see you all in the Facebook group. Have a great day.